So thanks everyone for joining us today. We're excited to present to everyone on how to establish a successful return to work program. We do ask that everyone mute themselves right now, just so that there's no background noise. And then we will, if you have any questions throughout the presentation at any point, please feel free to unmute yourself, or you can ask questions in the chat and we will answer them at the end.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Just a couple quick introductions here. My name is Danny Thomas. I'm a safety professional team lead who works for SOS Safety Solutions. I've been in the safety industry for about 10 years now. Been in the workers' compensation industry for a little over 6. So looking forward to getting a chance to talk about return to work with everyone, and excited to have everyone here for the call today.
Thanks, Danny. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Kerr. I'm a team lead within our claims department. I've been with Synergy. It's been about 5.5 years now. So looking forward to presenting to everyone today.
So when we talk about roadblocks with establishing a return to work program, how many of us have experienced struggles as it applies to establishing return to work? I mean, how many of us have struggled with return to work not really being seen as a priority, or constant struggles in finding light duty work? I mean, I'm sure many of us, this has been our experiences over time, which is why many of us are on the call today, I'm sure. The good news is that there are simple applications that we can instill in the workforce in order to help establish consistent return to work and to mitigate those roadblocks. And that's what we're going to cover today throughout this presentation. So for today's agenda, we're going to cover some action items. We're going to cover some helpful ways to implement return to work. And really where this starts is it starts with the relationship building. We're going to talk about onboarding physicians and medical providers, establishing expectations on the front end. We're also going to talk about the onboarding of a company that's looking to establish return to work, building those relationships as well and setting those expectations. We're also going to cover communication with the injured worker. If an employee has been injured, establishing those expectations and that line of communication. We're also going to talk about the why for transitional return to work. What are the benefits of transitional return to work, and why is it so crucial to implement in the workplace? We're going to look at limitations that we sometimes are met with as it applies to return to work, and identifying opportunities to improve upon our return to work.
So just to get started here, the first topic we're going to talk about is how to effectively onboard physicians. So in jurisdictions where we can direct the care or an employer has a panel in place, we always work to utilize network providers that are familiar with us. They understand our expectations. They understand our process. We're able to have an open line of communication with them. You know, if we have a claim occur and we have concerns regarding the claim, if we have concerns regarding the injured employee's treatment, you know, are they progressing through treatment as we would anticipate, or maybe they're not progressing like we would anticipate. We want to be able to have that open line of communication with the physician who's treating the injured employee to talk through that with them. And make sure that we are all on the same page and that we have that injured employee the center of the claim, and that we're working to get them back to work at their pre-injury status. We try to utilize the same providers as much as possible, again, just to continue to build our relationship with them. If we are onboarding a provider who we have not worked with in the past, we have educational material that we'll send to them. We work to set up a meeting with them to introduce ourselves, educate them on our return to work program. It is so different from other programs that are out there and very unique. So we want them to understand our process, understand the benefits of transitional return to work, why it's an expectation of ours that they always release injured employees back to work as soon as possible. And then we let them know, anytime they see an employee come in from a particular employer that we insure, that physician knows that modified duty work is always available for that injured employee to return to. And we take this approach to try and be proactive with the providers up front instead of, trying to be reactive. And once we have someone removed from work, or once we have concerns on a claim and we can't get in touch with the doctor, we can't speak to them about what our concerns are, or to let them know that modified duty work is available. We do this up front to, again, educate them on our program, let them know the benefits, and make sure that they understand the expectations from the very beginning.
So setting those expectations up front is just as important anytime we start a new partnership with a company. Setting these expectations up on the front end as it applies to transitional return to work. That way everybody has a clear understanding of what needs to happen. And really what this entails is discussing the return to work philosophy, making sure that everybody has that understanding so that we can have that common commitment with all parties. We want everybody to understand the why behind it so that then we can all be working for that same goal. So it's very important, like Becca said, to set those expectations on the front end. We also do this through kickoff training, specifically with supervisors. In most companies, it's the supervisors that are managing the day-to-day operations. They're the ones that are on the front line. They are in the main operations managing what is happening. So we want to train them on the front end so that they understand the expectations and what needs to happen, so that can then be instilled in the workforce. And then we're also on the front end, like Becca said, looking to be proactive. So we do this by identifying transitional duty jobs at the very start, whether it's sedentary jobs, light duty, light lifting jobs. We look to identify this work on the front end. That way, if there are complications that come about later on, we already have a job bank to refer back to. And that way, it helps us to efficiently, more readily identify jobs.
So not only do we set the expectations up front with the treating physician and with the accounts, we also set the expectations up front with the injured employee. So anytime we receive a claim, within the first 24 hours, we reach out to that injured employee just to have a discussion with them. We go over the injury that occurred. We look to identify how we can prevent that type of injury from happening in the future. We explain the workers' comp process to them. A lot of individuals, this is the first time that they've had a workers' comp claim, so they don't understand the process. They don't know what to expect. We want to build that rapport and build a relationship with those injured employees up front so they know that they can trust us and that we have their best interests throughout the life of the claim. We let them know if it is a situation where they're removed from work. We let them know that we work very closely with their employer and with the physician to identify a job for them to return to that's outside of their full duty job. If they have hesitations or concerns about returning to work, we address those concerns with them at that time. Sometimes in speaking with injured employees, they have concerns that they say, I can't work my full duty job. And we talk through that with them and let them know, they're not going to be returning to their full duty job immediately. We're working with their employer to identify other tasks for them to return to so that we can make sure that they're back in the workforce, back at the facilities, in that productive environment. We explain the benefits of transitional return to work, let them know why it's in their best interest to return to work and aid in their recovery. From an employer standpoint, it's very beneficial if the employer reaches out to the injured employee directly. If someone's off of work, by the employer reaching out to them, to let them know you're checking on their status. You want to know how they're feeling. You care about them. It shows that injured employee that they're a valued member of their team, of your team. They look forward to returning to work. They're eager to return to work, and they're not, they don't have any hesitations or concerns, and they're ready to get back into the workforce.
So up until this point, we've really covered what needs to happen with establishing a return to work program, the steps to take, but we haven't really discussed the why behind it. And this is one of the most important elements of establishing return to work, because many times individuals need to understand the why behind something in order to make it a priority. If they don't understand the why, it often will not be a priority. So this is crucial to understand why it's so important and vital. So number one, studies show that employees heal quicker when they are brought back to work. This includes the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons. If employees are brought back to work, they are in their normal routine, they're a productive part of the workforce, studies show they heal quicker as opposed to being at home, being outside of their normal routine, not being productive. Oftentimes, the injury status will continue longer than it would need to. Also, if an employee is brought back to work, that employee is in a controlled environment where restrictions can be monitored and supervised. The employee can be held accountable to those restrictions. However, if an employee is left at home, there's no way you can hold that employee accountable. The employee is free to go outside of the restrictions, and this can lead to further injury. This can lead to more delayed time getting back to work. So getting the employee back to work, having the employee in a controlled environment, that is one of the best ways to make sure that those restrictions can be adhered to. And by bringing people back to work, it instills a culture where employees are valued. We want to bring employees back to work because they're a productive part of the workforce. They're a valued part of the workforce. And being at work helps to continue that. This also minimizes the chance of further litigation and costs, as well as added expenses. It just allows the situation to be controlled better so that there's no extended expenses. This also, by bringing people back to work, it minimizes the chance of where you have situations when employees might attempt to get out of work in the future by potentially falsely alleging workplace injuries. If there's this sort of culture that's been instilled that it's inconsistent with return to work, that employees aren't always going to be brought back to work, then the door is opened where this might happen in the future. However, if this expectation is set up front, that management is going to bring all employees back to work, these situations are greatly minimized. And when you establish a culture that all employees are going to be brought back to work because they're a productive part of the workforce, these situations aren't going to happen as frequently. So there's many reasons that why it's so important to bring employees back to work. And it's important that people understand these reasons as well.
So we understand that it can be difficult at times for employers to offer modified duty work. Again, the important thing to remember here is that it's only temporary. That's why we call it a transitional return to work program, because we're transitioning them back to their full duty status. Again, it's important that these employees are brought back into the workforce. It helps aid in their recovery and their healing time. And not only do we work closely with the physicians when someone is removed from work, we work closely with the physicians throughout the life of the claim. So after each appointment, we're touching base with that provider's office and with that physician to make sure that their restrictions are progressing and that they're continuing to improve through treatment. If it's a situation where someone is on restrictions, at their next appointment, the restrictions are kept the same, we're talking to that provider to understand the reason why behind this and to to again talk to them about progressing their restrictions, so that from an employer standpoint, it's easier to accommodate these, and it's not a long-term modified duty position that you're offering to them. In a situation where someone is kept off of work, the claims professional and the safety professional work very closely with the physician, having that open discussion to say, what are their hesitations? What concerns do they have in releasing someone back to work? We've had situations where, after speaking with the provider, an employee may have had a deep laceration or an open wound, and the physician wasn't comfortable with them being back in the facility, or if it's at a manufacturer, they weren't comfortable releasing them back into that type of environment. But after speaking to the physician, and the safety professional being able to speak to the job and the environment that they have available, we were able to offer them work in a clean office environment until that wound heals. We've had concussions, which can be very challenging to accommodate at times, but we've offered they can wear sunglasses while they're at work, or we can provide them work in a dimly lit area with limited screen time, so that we're not triggering any of that. If someone's on driving restrictions and the physician's not comfortable releasing them to be able to drive, we will provide transportation in order to get them to and from work. And this is an expense that Synergy incurs. This is not passed on to our clients, because we're willing to pay that expense up front to get them to and from work, to make sure that the employees are, again, brought back to work, they're in that productive environment, and they're a valued member of your team. And it's important to know that finding modified duty tasks, it shouldn't fall on one person. So anytime we do have someone removed from work, the safety professional, members at the insureds, whether it's HR or supervisors, people that are on the floor and in the facility, we work to try and get everyone together so that we can brainstorm through this. We can think outside of the box on different jobs and duties that we may be able to offer to that injured employee in order to bring them back to work.
And here listed are some additional resources just for reference. Many of these points we've covered here during this presentation, but again, these are good resources to utilize. It includes the official disability guidelines, where that can be viewed. American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, there's a link provided as well. And just again, some talking points here, again, as additional resources.
So with that, is there any questions that anyone may have, or anything you would like to discuss?
I think there might be in the chat section. I see one here. Can we consider offering volunteer work opportunities that benefit the community if it meets the restrictions?
Yes, so we have seen this in situations, again, because it's a transitional phase and working to get them back. So it's not something where you're going to have to offer this modified duty in a long-term scenario. That we have come across that in situations where if someone it's a more severe type of injury and these restrictions are going to be long-term, and it's not something where they're going to transition through the modified duty as we would anticipate, that is always an option. It's very costly option. That's why we try whenever possible to bring them back into that same workforce.
And we have another question here. How are wages handled with modified duty?
So what we look at when someone is brought back to work on modified duty, as long as they're meeting their average weekly wage, they're not owed any additional benefits. So we calculate how their average weekly wage is, and look at that on a weekly basis to determine, as long as they're still earning those wages and they don't have a loss of earning power, then they're not owed any additional earnings.
And we have another question. Should there be a cutoff limit for how long someone should be on modified duty? What happens if it is for an extended period of time?
So we do have different options. If someone it's hard to say a specific time frame on when someone should be released back to work full duty. It all depends on the type of injury.
Yep.
It depends on that injured employee specifically. Do they have things going on in the background, any comorbidities that may be playing into that delays their healing process? So it's difficult to give a specific amount of time. But there are some options if it is, again, a more significant injury, something that's where they're going to be on these restrictions for an extended period of time, long term. We do have other resources that we can look at to see where we can offer them work outside of their normal duties.
And then another question, how does FMLA and continued health benefits impact someone off for an extended period of time if the employer pays all or part of their benefits and they are not back to work?
So, okay, so if someone is off of work and they're being paid through workers' comp, they would still be receiving benefits from that standpoint. We have had situations where if it's not being covered under work comp, they're on FMLA and the health benefits. I would advise you to discuss that with your employment attorney. They would be able to further direct you on that. But if someone is off of work, it's a compensable injury, we would be paying them their lost wages. And we have had situations where the employer would still be able to pay their health benefits to make sure that that continues during that period of time.
Are there any other questions? Well, we really appreciate everyone's time this morning. I hope this was helpful. Yeah, we enjoyed it. But yeah, if ever there are questions, I mean, you can certainly reach out to us. Again, we're with SOS Safety Solutions and Synergy Insurance. So yeah, let's see, it looks like we have another question here.
A few more.
Okay. Does your claim system help or hinder the tracking of efforts? That's the first question.
Yeah, Fred, could you expand on that a little bit?
And feel free to unmute yourself as well if that's easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we do have a system, a claim system where we track, again, when they're scheduled for each follow-up appointment. It notifies us after that appointment has occurred so that we follow up on the medical notes. If they have diagnostic testing, we follow up again within 24 hours of that testing that has occurred to make sure that we're obtaining the reports. If it's a situation where someone's in physical therapy, we can see when they're scheduled to attend physical therapy, and we reach out to that physical therapist on a bi-weekly basis to make sure that they are being compliant, that they're progressing through treatment.
Okay, the next question is, if someone resists returning back to work with special accommodations, does not return phone calls, what should we do?
So it depends on the jurisdiction and the situation for this claim. The most important thing is if you have work available to that injured employee and you send them a job offer letter outlining that work is made available to them, even if they choose to not return. Again, it depends on the time frame and the specific claim. And if you have a specific claim that you're referring to, I can definitely look into that. But the biggest thing is having that job offer letter out there that shows them that work is made available. In some circumstances, based on that job offer letter, we're able to stop paying them those indemnity benefits since work is made available. In other situations, though, we can't just unilaterally stop their indemnity benefits. So we would have to either push the claim into litigation or get in front of a judge to show that work was made available. So again, if there is a specific claim, we can definitely look into that. And I can get back to you and have further discussion surrounding that. But the job offer letter is the most important thing.
And that's a good point too. I see here also a best practice would be to engage the worker to identify the root cause of their resistance. This is a great point as well. No question, to have that communication up front. That's an excellent point. We have another question here. I have an employee that has been off due to a concussion since 6/30/2020. Suggestions. Yeah, so like Becca said, concussions can be fairly difficult and challenging. I think with this, we would have to know more specifically what the restrictions are. Like, for example, can this person be in front of a computer? Can this, what can this person do? What can this person not do? Typically in this situation, it's going to be something that's sedentary. It's going to be something such as clerical work. If the employee can sit in front of a computer, that helps open the door for more jobs. However, sometimes with concussion symptoms, that's the employee's not allowed to do that. So other things, like I said, clerical work, assisting with administrative type work. We've even had employees that will, it depends what the company is we're working with, but sometimes we might have an employee sit and watch the operations and be sort of an added supervisor. We might have an employee, we've had employees that will serve as, say, a guard at one of the entry doors as well. Again, that depends on the specific account. But for this question, we would also need to know what the restrictions are, so what we have to work with. But there are certainly things that can be done to accommodate.
And we have investigation tools from a claim side that we can utilize. Again, like Danny said, because concussions are so, it's very hard to gauge whether they're truly having the ongoing symptoms and things like that. If it's a situation where you believe that injured employee is active outside of work, we have some different options to dig into that. Depending on the jurisdiction, there's IMEs, or we can look to have second opinions completed to have another physician review the medical records, evaluate the injured employee, and give an opinion as to whether they feel that they're able to return to work, even though the treating physician may not. So there's definitely some other options from a claims standpoint of how we can kind of combat that and work with the treating physician to get them on board. Okay, so the next question was employee disregards emails, communications, phone calls, does not respond to certified mail, and is able to return to work and declines to meet to discuss a plan to return to work. Would this go into litigation? So it would all depend, again, on the jurisdiction and the time frame, how old the claim is. In some jurisdictions, as long as you have offered them that job, and it looks like, if you sent it to them certified mail, you can prove that they have received that job offer letter, then sometimes we're able to stop indemnity benefits based off of that. In other times, it would go into litigation if we're not able, depending on the jurisdiction and the time frame of the claim, if we're not able to stop indemnity benefits based on you sending a job offer letter, we could push that into litigation to try and get resolution to it. And if anyone else ever does have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us if there's a specific claim you would like to talk through or things like that. It's a little bit easier so that we can speak to the jurisdiction and that claim in particular. But I hope we were able to answer everyone's questions. And thank you everyone for joining today.